Hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir. We can hear you now.
Okay. We are just chit chatting till the time everybody comes back.
Okay. Okay. Sorry.
They are missing the fun stuff. They are missing the fun stuff. Yes.
You said there is some opening for all roles, right?
See, multiple. For example, we have a manager role. Similarly, we have engineering role or a support role. We also have information security manager kind of a role.
There will be missing. Cybersecurity.
So we don't have a kind of cyber security role because cyber is very wide. So those roles are largely divided. And if you look at India from a Microsoft standpoint, there are 2-3 things which happens largely in India. A, support. That's a bigger piece. Then second is a development, which is an offshore development that we do. And third is the compliance. Right. So these are the 3 key roles that we have. Even if you look at security, let's say a threat hunting kind of a role, largely it is into a support because our internal security is in US. Okay. But yeah, largely these are the kind of roles that we operate from India.
So you come under which support?
Support. So we have CSS organization, which is a support organization. It is one of the bigger organizations in India. Then second, we have an engineering group, which is a software development. In engineering, again, they have 2 lines. One is a support engineering, where if a support is unable to solve any case, it goes to a EEE or a PG. So they solve those cases then. And then one side of it is a pure software development, which is pure engineering. Then we have some PM roles, like there's a new product research, those kind of roles are also available. And then the compliance roles in terms of the GDPR, in terms of ISOs and stuff like that. So those roles are there. But out of these, I think CSS is the bigger one.
But then when you say support engineering, but most of the support of Microsoft is outsourced to either Mindtree or this company.
It is not outsourced.
Other
Insourced. Yes. So, for example, if I'm in Mindtree, I will work from Microsoft for Microsoft, but I will be on the payroll of Mindtree.
Yeah. So the similar way that.
So we have those roles plus the FTE roles, the employee roles as well. So the if you look at Microsoft, they are moving slightly away from the outsourcing. Not completely, but their first preference is to get people on the roads and then look out for vendors if they don't have.
What is the experience level that are looking for?
See, it starts from a 1 year, goes 20 years, 25 years. And the beauty of this is it can happen that a 2-year experienced guy is leading a team of people with 25 years experience. So that can happen. Depending upon your technical interest and your areas of interest and expertise. Like, for example, in my team, I have a lady who joined us 1.5 years back as a friend. Okay. And I have few joiners in the team who comes with 10, 12, 13 years of experience as well. But this lady is doing so good that we are thinking of getting her to a technical advisor role, where she will be advising those people with 13 years of experience. Why? Because she has that domain knowledge. She has gone deeper into the product and understood networking as a whole. And we have levels of trainings there like L50, L100, L200, L300. L50 is very, very basic. What is IP? What is subnet? What is default gateway? That. L100 is how connectivity happens. If there is a problem, how to solve basic problems. L200 on respective technology. So for example, L200 on load balancer, L200 on application gateway, L200 on express route, L200 on VPN. So like these, we have 25 products in networking. So if you do L200 on all these 25 products, then you become eligible for L300 on one product. So if you have done L200, let's say, on all the products, you are already an SME. Once you do L300, then you are an expert, and then you can apply for a higher roles as well. You can move across to different levels. And the way it works in Microsoft, there are, from a benefits standpoint, there are three ways to look at. One is a title, the designation. Microsoft is very flat in designation, and they are cutting the designations even further now. Right? So they don't believe that designation should drive the individual. That's the philosophy that they have. Just to give you an example, in PwC, people with 7-8 years of experience, they can become managers. In Microsoft, people with 17-18 years can apply for a manager. So different organization culture. Then the second criteria that they have is a banding. What career band you fall in. So you can be an individual contributor, you can be a team or a people manager kind of a role as well. If you're in an IC role, you have IC1, IC2, IC3, IC4, 5, 6, and it goes. What does that mean is, in IC4, for example, you can start from X and go till Y. And once you have achieved Y, you can then transition into a next band. Okay. So that's stage banding. The third is your level. And that is something which is important. Level decides your salary. Level decides your bonuses. Level decides your stocks as well. So my boss purchased or got a stock when he was very young. He is in Microsoft for last 15 years. So he got the stocks at $15, $16 per stock. Now it is $254. And every 3 months, you get some stocks. So consider how many 3 months, how many stocks into 254 now, right? So, and many people have taken retirement once the stocks have hit 320, 330 as well till last month. Many people have taken the voluntary retirement. I am done now. I can buy some startup for 2-3 startups at least. Yeah. See, imagine if I have purchased a stock, let's say at $20, which is what, 1,600 rupees, 2,000 rupees. Now the stock price is 200, right? Which is 1,60,000 or 2 lakh, right? And I would have a stocks worth, or let's say I have 10,000 stocks. People would have more than that. So 10,000 stocks into 2 lakh. Imagine. Calculator will give E. Right. So, and these are long-term investments, so you don't have to pay taxes as well.
There'll be American tax and Indian tax.
So only American tax, that's it. No Indian tax. And American tax is only the transaction, that's it. No other tax.
So, I
people have
mean,
made-
usually there are videos which says that Microsoft interviews will involve a lot of the algorithm and data structures kind of fish. So is it going to be the same even for the security domain, or will there be any other deviation here?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
Data structures and all that asked in interviews.
See, that totally depends on what kind of interview you're going into. So, for example, if you are applying for a PM role, you would be expected to do a data analysis, data crunch. You should be aware about the data structures, algorithms, because that's what you will be doing it. If you are applying for a security, nobody would talk data to you. People would want you to be aware about the compliances, the impacts, the real time or the recently happened malware attacks or incidents that has happened. So people will talk those. In our engineering, people will talk about the technology. Like if you're talking about networking, how does a load balancer works? How does TCP/IP handshake happen? So the questions would be more towards what kind of role you are applying to. And there are a lot of roles, I can tell you, endless. Okay, so I have now, in July, I will complete 2 years with Microsoft. So I was looking at the career portal. I got confused. What is this role? What is this role? And if you look through the JD, it looks like the same. It's all English, 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 English. Right? So the best thing that I do then, I go and connect with the individual, understand what do you need in this role. They tell you that this is what I need. And then you can resonate whether you are fit for it or not. Like for example, in Microsoft, we have sales roles as well. We call it as a CSAM. Earlier, they used to be called as TAMs, technical account managers. Now they are called CSAMs. Now in a CSAM, they would not ask you about the data crunching. They would ask you how would you increase the sales or increase the revenue or increase the consumption for a customer. So the focus would be more there. Which industry you will target, why you would target this industry, how you will increase the adoption of cloud in this industry, what customers do you know in this sector, what would be your strategy or your plan to increase. Those will be the questions. So it totally depends on the role.
Okay.
Yeah, but Microsoft is good.
Looking for interns to.
Yes, they are. They are looking for interns, and in my team, there was a lady who interned with us for 6 months. She left after the internship, and after waiting for 3 or 4 months, she applied again, and we immediately took her back in. So yeah.
Generally, how many rounds of discussion will be there? I heard like 4, 5, 6.
Not six, not six. It used to be 7, 8 rounds earlier. Now, after Satya has taken up the place, what he has done, he says the interviews should not be stressful. Okay. He says interviews should be enjoying discussions or enjoyment. So let other people be very comfortable and you also be very comfortable. So now, maximum I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, including the HR round, or 6. So I'll tell you how 6. So technical round 1 will happen. Technical round 2 will happen. Then a cultural round 1 will happen. A cultural round 2 will happen. Then HR round will happen. And in some cases, a language check may happen. So that's how it makes 6. But from a technical standpoint, only 2 rounds. And then rest is all about cultural fitment. That's it. So cultural is not psychometry. I mean, it's more like how would you perform under a stress situation? What's your personality? Are you a person who love to share, who love to collaborate, who love to grow? You have some aspiration, or you're just coming for the money, right? So, for example, if I ask you, what are some of the behaviors that a support engineer should have? And you stresses only about a technical. I should know technically really well. Fail. Reject. Ownership. Collaboration. Knowledge sharing. Inclusiveness within the team. Communication. Then contribution and giving the feedback to the team, partnering with other regions as well, learning from them and caring for them as well, supporting the team members when they are in need. If you answer these things, tick. So that's a cultural fit.
Microsoft, I think, you need to study separately. You need to have kind of a.
I would not say study separately. Just be yourself. Be a human. That's it. Don't be a robot or a machine. Be a human, and that's it. See, in India, I would say these are some of the behaviors which we have got from our parents, from our relatives, naturally. It's just that in the interviews, we don't speak about it. For example, if your friend is in need, you will not say no. You will go and support the guy. But in the interview, we will not talk about it. We'll say, why would I share my story to this guy? I don't know him. How would he perceive me? His question was different. I have not understood the question, so let me be very, very precise because that's what has been told to us since the days in interview. Tell only what is asked. Right? But in Microsoft, it is like being a human first, apply, be human, and be very, very natural. So last week I interviewed a lady from Infosys, 3.5 years experience, and she was smiling. She was not answering the questions very completely the way I would have expected. So, but for every question after she answered, she was smiling. So I said, why you are smiling? She said, that's how I am. I'm trying to control my smile, but since I don't know much of the answers, I'm smiling at myself. That I have to learn more. I have to learn more. To learn. Right. So since she was natural and truthful, we got her selected. Right. So it's just be natural.
Training, obviously, if you do a couple of months training, people will pick it up. The personality that.
I would not say personality. Like, for example, if I talk to Shreyas, Shreyas is a smiling face. But if Shreyas sits like this, yes. Yes, I can do it. On the contrary, if Shreyas says, yeah, I can do it. I have done it in the past. I'm confident I'll do it. And here is one of the example to kind of collaborate or corroborate that. If Shreyas tell me a success story for him in a smiling way, I know he's confident. I know he's in an interview. He's also under a stress, yet smiling, yet carrying a very natural body posture and telling me a story of his success or a failure. Right? For me, that's a win. So in my interview, one of the interviews asked me, tell me one failure that you had. Now we all prepared for our successes. We don't prepare for the failures, right? So I shared some of the stories, like the database one I shared. Then when I joined PwC, I was sent to Bangladesh to grow the business, and that was the first time that I was doing sales. Failed miserably. 1 year, 19 lakh rupee of business, and then came back. So eaten, swollen, everything I did there, and 19 lakh rupees what I earned and came back. That was a biggest failure that I had in 1 year. And then I was moved to Bangalore. In Bangalore, the situation was totally turned around. I was doing 23 crores of business. Right. So the guy asked me, why do you believe that you did 19 in Bangladesh and why 23 in India? So I shared my learnings that in Bangladesh we didn't have the office. I was new and I was hesitant in approaching the customer. I was shy. So I didn't approach the customers. I thought office is the main thing for customers to see, but I was wrong. Person was the main thing for the customer to see, and I was not there. And that was my learning. When I moved to Bangalore, I had an office, I never stepped in there. I was always at the customer side, and that was a success. That's the honest answer. That's how you should take Microsoft interviews. I'm not sure about others. You should not try it with AWS or Google. But yeah, with Microsoft, this is the mantra. Anyways, we can catch up more on Microsoft and the openings. We'll come back to here because this is also one important aspect. All right, managing user permissions, and now we are in the type of accounts. See, in Windows environment, we have backup operators, power users, administrators, normal users. All these groups are there in Windows. Similarly, in Linux or Unix, we have different type of users. One user is a root, which is like the big daddy. The other kind of users are the super users, which are like the blessed babies. Okay. And so for example, administrator, or let's say a CEO is a super user. He can do whatever he wants to do in the organization. His directs are the individuals who are supposed to do something, and they are the owners of that something, like chief operating officer, chief information security officer, chief technology officer, chief information officer. So they are responsible for a particular domain, and they are super users that way. So they are blessed babies. Then we have a third line, which is a normal users, Aam Aadmi Party, right? Now, these are the three layers. The root is a system default user. ROOT is a system default user. We can change the name of this gentleman, but then we don't need to. We may, but we may not. Similarly, in Microsoft environment, we have a super user or a default user, which is administrator. Again, we can change the name of administrator and we may not. Right? Now, in Windows, we can create a group, we can add users to it, and we can give administrative privileges to them so that they can manage the system. So they are blessed babies. Similarly, in Unix, we can create group, or we can identify individuals and give them special permissions to do administrative tasks, so they become the blessed babies. Okay, we call them as the system administrator. And then the third one is a normal user, the users that we belong to in a community where we log in and do our operation work and then we exit. Okay, so three type of users. Now, a root account, having a root password is not necessary. We can have a blank password as well. Not recommended though, but we can have a blank password as well. Not having a root password means one less password to manage, one less vulnerability. Root access is gained by system administrators, blah, 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 blah. Now, in Microsoft, we can manage the users in OUs. We can create user groups, add the users to the groups, and make that group a part of the administrator group. That's how we do it. Or make a user directly a part of the administrator group. That's how we do it. We can do it that way as well. Make users part of the root group, so that what root group can do, they can also do it. That's one way of doing it. Another efficient way of doing it is create a virtual group of users into a sudoers file and define what they can do, what they cannot do. Okay. For example, I want the system administrators to add user, to change the password of another user, but I don't want them to restart the server. If I add them into a root group, they would be able to do so. But I don't want to do that. I want more control over what they can do. Kind of a delegation is something that we can, privileged delegation is something that we can do through a sudoers file. Okay. So we have etc sudoers file. Before we come here, okay, let's go in this fashion only. So when we add a user, we can add a user with a user add command. User add space a username and the user will be added to the system. Now, what happened when we create a user in Windows? We create a right click, manage users and computers and groups. We add a user, and the next time when I log in as a new user, a small screen comes which says setting up the environment, preparing up, creating the profile and all that stuff happen. And then a desktop comes, right? So in the backend, what is happening? My desktop creation is happening. A registry for me is getting created. My IE or Internet Explorer or Edge settings are getting applied. Restrictions are getting implemented. So all that stuff is happening at the backend while I authenticate as a new user and getting access to the system. In Unix, when we add a user and when we authenticate using that user, content from a scale directory, etc/etc/scale directory gets copied into the home directory. So it's a template directory basically. So /etc/scale directory content gets copied into my home/paras folder. Now, the environment in Unix contains the path, variables, any startup script that I want, any exit script that I want, all that goes into a scale directory. Okay. Similarly, when I create a user, some default password configurations are implemented as well for the user. Those default password configurations, if you look at login.devs file, etc login.devs file, those are very, very vague. So until or unless we configure login.devs file, maximum password age would be 9999, which means never, basically. Right? So we have to configure the login.devs to control maximum password age, minimum password age, those kind of parameters. And that's something that we can control from login.devs. So when a new user is created, login.devs is a global password implementation or a configuration that gets enforced. From a default user add content standpoint or the command that it picks up, etc default user add is the place which tells me whether I have to create a home directory by default, yes or no. What would be the default comment for that user or a description about that user, if any. So that will be there. What shell do I need to provide to the user once the user is added to that list? Do I need to allow user authentication or do I need to disallow user authentication? So those configurations can be managed as a default template through the etc default user add file. Now, so So this is what my login.devs file looks like. Okay. which is where is the mail directory for the user system wide. Maximum password age, minimum length, warning age. So, anybody knows a correlation between a minimum password age and a maximum password age and a history? Explain.
It is like a past, how many password you can, for example, last 5 days, 1 month.
Correlation, I'm saying. Maximum password age, minimum password age, and history.
Maximum password is for how long you can use it.
Correct.
20 days.
Correct.
Password is something like can't use a password. I think minimum password is like you reset your.
So what will happen if I have a maximum password age of 90 days, minimum password age of 1 day, or let's say 5 days. Okay. Maximum password age 90 days, minimum password age 5 days, and a history of 1 day. What will happen?
Reset the password after 5 days.
After the second day. Why? Minimum password age is 5 days. Yeah.
These days I can't use the same password.
And what will happen if I want to retain the same password?
History is 1 day, so that same password cannot be used.
Which means after 10th day, I can reset my password to the original password. So after 5 days, so let's say I'm changing the password. I've changed the password to ABC. Okay. My history is remembered as 1. Pass 1 was my previous password. Now my password is pass 2. Next 5 days, I will not be able to change my password because the minimum password age is in force. 6th day, if I try to change it to pass 1, it will reject because the history is 1. So I will reset to pass 3. For next 5 days, I am unable to change my password. Next day, my history has pass 2, not pass 1. I can reset my password to pass 1. 1 history. Right? So to match up the maximum password age of 90, what should I do? So let's say if I do minimum password age 10 days. Okay. And history to be 9 or 8. 80 days. See, rather 90 because my first password change 10 days I have to wait. Password history is 8 previous passwords. So 80. 8 times I have to wait for 10 days. So essentially it will match up to 90 days.
So it's like how many days of minimum parameter is set against the multiple of.
Yeah. So that's a correlation.
Usually this minimum password is.
Yes.
Yeah, but Windows.
Everywhere it is used.
In Windows.
Yes, it is used.
Yeah, I think in Microsoft, I guess once you change it on the same service password, you need to wait 24 hours.
Yeah.
For the next password.
It is there. Minimum password age is also there in Windows. Okay. So that's a correlation. This was asked to me.
Sir,
Yeah,
can you please
sorry.
give the definitions of each of them? Max password age, min password age, and history of.
See,
As in,
maximum
how,
password age. Yeah. So maximum password age is when my password will expire and system will force me to change the password. That's a maximum password age. Minimum password age is the day or are the days before which I will not be able to change the password again. So if I have changed the password today, which is 21st of May, and my minimum password age is 4, then I will not be allowed, if I change my password today, I will not be allowed to change my password till 25th of May.
But
Because
usual
if
practice is to make this value as 0, right?
No, if you make it 0, then the entire stuff is lost. Why? So if you're able to see the board, let's say.
Yes.
So let's say my max password age is 90 days. My min password age is 0 days. My history or the previous passwords that I want to restore is, let's say, 10. Now, today is 21st of May, 2022. What I will do, my password is, let's say, pass1. And this is a password which I remember very easily, conveniently. I don't have to write it down somewhere. I remember this password and this is my lovely password. I want to retain this password. 21st of May, system asked me to change the password. I changed it to pass2. History, minimum password age is 0 days. After changing, I will again change it to pass3. Then to pass4 because the history is 10. And I'll repeat it till pass11 and then finally reset to pass1 again. Why? Because there is no minimum days enforcement. Which means I am defeating or bypassing the control.
Okay.
Got it?
So minimum pass days is nothing but so how many ever days the validity of the past password is?
Sorry, how many?
Okay, what I'm trying to say is, if let us say I have created one password for my Gmail, won't it let me to change it immediately? 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
It would, right?
Yes.
And
Hello.
so, yeah, hello, can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
So in typical environment like Gmail or any of them, so history value is going to be huge. Is that what is the meaning of it? History value is going to be in some hundreds or something.
Yes. So it'll not be 100, but typically if you look at Gmail, for example, I know it doesn't allow you to save last 7 or change last 7 passwords. And or rather less, because if you try to recover your password, it says enter any last 3 remembered passwords.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right. So probably the history is 3 there.
Okay.
So that's a correlation basically between different parameters. Then we have a UID min and max, which means when we add a user, what is my starting user ID? And what is my maximum user ID? So 1 to 60,000 means 59,000 users I can create on this system. Then what is my system user ID range? It's basically from 201 to 999. For a root user, the user ID is 0. Similarly, for the GID min and max, system GID min and max, we have the numbers. Create a home directory, yes and no. we can do that. Then we have a umask of 077, and which essentially means if I create a new directory, what is going to be the what is going to be the default permission of that directory? So it'll be 7 minus 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 minus. It's basically negating from the umask. Okay. User group enabled, yes. Which means when I add a user, do I want to add the group along with it automatically? Yes or no? And then encryption method for the password storage, it's SHA-512. These are the default configuration which affects the system wide. Okay. Now I can look at the default as well. So if you look at this, it says what is the default scale directory, etc scale, what is the default shell that you want to give to each user. That is a bin bash. Bash is just one shell which is available, like CMD prompt that we have on Windows. Now, if I say /bin no login, it is other than the bash. If I say /bin no login, it means the user will not be able to log into the system. Even if the user authenticates, they will still not be able to use the system interactively. Okay. Expire, inactive, home, group, these are all default configurations. So home is where my directory will get created. Inactive means inactive -1 means the user will be active. Expire means when this user is going to expire. If I am creating a temporary user, do I need to provide an expiry date to that user account or not? Days. Okay. So that's how you define it.
If it's blank, it doesn't expire.
It doesn't expire.
And the inactive is a positive value, so if he doesn't log in for this many days,
Then account will be deactivated.
Other than -1, if it is +1, or let's say 1.
So if I have not logged into the system for 1 day, then my account will be inactive.
So is this expire field used for any container kind of logins which are provided for temporary usage?
Sorry, come again.
That expire field is there, right? So is that used for any container kind of login temporarily for any machine spawning and then using it for some temporary purpose and then removing it? That kind of purpose is it used?
So these are the default configuration which affects the entire system wide configuration. If you want to be specific to the user, you can leave it on the command lines.
So
But
I
this
mean,
is
usually the use case for that expire.
So use case will be, so for example, let's say my password is expired. I mean, sorry, for example, I have gone above my password maximum age, 99999, and now today is a 10,000 day or whatever day is, where my password has expired. The moment my password is expired, if I have not changed my password for expire number of days, my account will be inactive. The inactive tells if I have not logged into the system for these many days, then my account will be inactive.
Okay.
Clear? Now, what happens when I add a user? Let's say I do a user add race 1. So when I add a user race1, I get to see an entry of this user in the past WD file. Which is this one. Now, this is my user ID. X means I have a password set. 1003 is what my user ID is. This is what my group ID is. And this blank between these two separators is the comment. Since I have not provided any comment, it is blank. Then a home directory, from where it has picked up the home directory, the defaults. Bin bash, again, the shell picked up from the defaults. Right? Now I want to add another user and I give a comment. Now, if I look at etc password, there was no comment here. Now there is a comment here. Just a description, basically. So similarly, I can provide the parameters on the command line to the user add command to either modify or to add different sections of the configuration to it, and that will take care of it. Other thing is I can come edit the password file, make the changes here, and those changes will be active the next time user logs into the system. Okay.
So in this case, we are bypassing the maximum and minimum policy. If we manage to change
The user IDs. Yes. For example, I want to make raise to a root equivalent user. I can come to this password file, remove 1004 and change it with 0 and 0. 0 is the root's user ID and the group ID. So if you look at root here, this entry, you have a 00 ID.
But can there exist two users with the same ID?
If you manually edit it.
And once the system, the account becomes inactive, only the root can make it active.
Yes. Root or a super user to whom we have delegated the information. Clear? Right. Similarly, if you look at a scale directory, it's empty, right? But if you do an A allows you to see the hidden files as well. Then you see there is a bash logout, bash profile, and bash RC file as well. Now, these RC profile logout, these are specific files which are called out during certain operations. So when I exit, bash logout gets executed. When I log in, my bash RC and profile gets activated. So if I create an LES, then let's say if I do a C here, it clears. But C is not a command. C is not a command. I've created a variable for C to act as a CLS or a clear screen. Right? So I can add these variables to the bash profile or a bash RC so that anytime that I log in to the system, my LESs are active. Right? So for example, these are the aliases which I have in bash RC. So RM, CP, MV. Okay. Now this I am looking at the root. If I go to home Joker, if I run the command again, it's different. So here if you see, and here if you see, these are two different files. Right? I can add aliases in my bash profile, and every time that I log in, I will have those profile loaded up for me.
What are we trying to say in that alias?
So for example, let's say I am a, this is what my directory is. This is what my user ID is, right? If I do ls-la, I see history, logout, profile, RC. 4 hidden files that I see. Now let's say I go to a bash profile. What I see here is it is sourcing a bash RC. So if bash RC exists, read that file and include it here, which means a profile is loaded. It needs a bash RC file and it loads bash RC file. And it exports a path variable for me here. If I have to add certain paths, I can add it here. Okay. Now I go to a bash RC file.
BI is some text editor.
It's a text editor, yes. So Nano is there, VI is there. Now, if you see here, there's a section which says user specific aliases and functions, right? So here I can add an alias and I can say Janardhan. Anytime that I type Janardhan, it will execute ls-lr-larth command for me. Okay. And I'll save it. To make it active in the real time, I'll just source it. Now, if I say Janardhan, it'll execute the command. Command is something else, but the name is something else.
Security.
So look at the aliases which has been created. For example, I can create an alias of ls, okay, to do a copy of a dump copy from my system to a remote server. So anytime a user presses ls, a remote copy function executes. Right?
The actual function doesn't execute.
Execute doesn't happen.
So you
right?
have to change the LS, you have to make another alias for the actual LS as well, right?
Yeah. So when you are looking at history, let's say if you're an auditor, you will do a history. You will say, okay, the innocent user has just done ls, that's it. But in reality, it's not the ls. It's something else. Right? So you have, when you are auditing, just make sure to review these bash RC and bash profiles and logout files as well, because that's where a custom functions or a custom script or an alias with a command may be getting called out. And that's something which might be an interest to you guys.
aren't these reserved commands and it's not be possible to edit, right? So ls and la, all these are reserved commands.
You can do that. Everything is a file. So that's what I said. You can go and corrupt the system as well in Unix.
Like what are the predefined alias function? So now you added some alias function as well. Okay, see if I type Janardhan. So will I be able to get the function or the comment you have written?
You just look at those profile files and stuff. You will get to know the aliases created.
So it was under bash RC.
Bash RC. You can create it in a bash profile, bash RC, both would be okay.
So all alias will go under bash.
.bash underscore profile or .bash RC.
When you perform for RC, is there a perform for RC or is it just name?
It was, so bash is a shell, R is a resource, C I forgot.
But this alias would be applicable for that user alone.
Yeah, it's
Not for that user. But if somebody has done it in the scale, then it applies to all the new users.
All the new users.
All the new users.
globally.
Let's say some user has created or customized all the comments in bash, and is there a way to format and use the default?
You can do it with the programmatic way, but not the straight way available.
Root user cannot take control on all the users on the system.
I mean, he can, but then either you have to place it manually, the original bash RC, let's say, you have to replace the file, or you have to do it in a programmatic way, like in a for loop. For all the folders under /home directory, if the bash RC file is found, replace that with this one. So that small code or a script, shell script is something that somebody would have to write.
Or you can maybe restrict access to modify that.
Absolutely. So if you look at a scale directory, for example, so it's a directory. Root user has read write X. Other users have only read and execute, which means they can go inside the directory, but they can't write anything in the directory. Right? So that way you can control the permissions as well. But what if somebody has set the set user ID or a group ID here?
So that dot is for the special function.
Yes. So that's where when you're doing an auditing and you see a scale directory marked with the special permissions or a plus sign, there's an extended ACL or there is a set UID or the GID applicable there, which should not be the case. So that's where you will have to ask and probe more questions to the system administrators. Clear? Simple? I told you Linux is very simple. Okay. So then the user add. So user add defaults and the scale. So we have bash logout profile and a bash RC file here. Scale is getting inside the skull. Cheat sheet. This is self is a cheat sheet.
Like usually when we do some CLIs, I mean whether it's so we here directory will have need some time.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like I said, there is a follow-up module as well, which will come up in terms of a threat landscape. So there also you will have some more Unix commands like grep, find. You will go more deeper into those commands there as well.
So next, we'll go ahead with Kali.
Yes.
By the end of this module, what is being expected? Are we going to delay with the Linux commands?
So see, the module expectation is a concept. It is not about a command. Today the command is grep, tomorrow a papa grep can come, right? So the expectation is not to gulp the commands, but rather understand the concept, why it is there, what impact it can have, what is the concept of a password age, what is the concept of a scale directory, what is the importance of this, so that when you land yourself in the field, you would know that these are some things which existed in CentOS. Let me check whether that exists in Ubuntu or not as an auditor. If it is not, what is an alternative of scale directory in Ubuntu? Right?
This could be different even Red Hat as well.
So CentOS Red Hat would 99% same.
But Ubuntu and
Ubuntu is a Debian based environment. Red Hat is a RPM based environment. So the paths may get a little differ. Okay, like SUSE, for example, would be slightly different. But if you look at Unix as a whole, Solaris, HP Unix, AIX, all flavors of Linux, you will see 80% of a commonality in there. Okay,
concept is same.
concept is same. Yes,
Maybe a command a bit different.
correct. Even in Windows, the concept remains the same.
Way of approaching things.
Correct. That's why I'm correlating Windows and Linux together, because concept is important for you guys to know. It is not about a command or a GUI or something else. It's about the concept.
So this dash thing you told, right? The same kind of concept would be then
CMD.
CMD.
So CMD is one shell. PowerShell is another shell. The third shell is itself a GUI. Right? So 3 shells are there in Windows as well. Yeah. Now, when we have come to managing passwords. Okay. So now when we are talking about the passwords, we have looked at maximum password age, minimum password age, warning days, expiry, inactivity, all that stuff we have seen. Now, what if we want to manage it through the command line? Those are the system-wide configuration. But let's say I have to manage the passwords. I am tasked to manage the password for the users. How can I manage it on the command line? So to manage it, we have a command called passwd and change, CHAGE. Okay, so 2 commands, passwd and change. With passwd, I can lock an account by giving a -L. -L, lock the account. Give the account name or the username. -U, unlock that account. He has bribed me, unlock. Okay. -N is a minimum number of days that a password expiry can happen. X is a maximum password age. W is a warning of days before the password expiry. So 7 days before the expiry, I will get a pop-up or a notification. Password is about to expire, please change it.
So basically these things for local users, right?
These things are for local users.
Local users. Because
If you look at Unix, most of the implementations are local.
but how, so for example, maximum authentication happens for directory, right?
In a user environment,
User.
non server environment, non Unix server environment. This is a Unix server, Linux server. Okay, we are not going to work on Excel on Linux. Correct, no? We are going to work on Samba, on Apache, on NFS, server services basically. And that's why we have Unix servers. In Unix, from a directory standpoint, you have NIS or NIS plus, you have LDAP, and now you have connectors as well to Active Directory. So if you have a connector to Active Directory, you can manage all of this in Active Directory, policies and all that stuff. You can manage it on the GUI in Microsoft environment.
What I can tell you is, for example, if in the normal operation scenario, okay, basically I covered that they will integrate with your Windows activity. So in that perspective, these commands will only be useful when you have a local account.
Locally.
That's right.
Yes.
That perspective.
Yes. Then number of days after expiry to disable a user account, and then print a summary of the password. So if you see a summary, okay, if you see a summary, what you get to see is a race one, which is a user name. LK, which means the user account is logged. Why? Because the user has not authenticated yet. And we have not provided the password as well. We have added the user, but we have not given the default or the first password for a user to authenticate. Hence, it is coming as LK. It can come as NP as well, which means no password. NP is no password. LK is account logged. Okay, then we have the date on which the last password change happened. In this case, it's a user creation date or an account creation date. Then we have 0 and the numbers, which is the minimum password age and the maximum password age. Then we have the warning days, which is 7. And then we have the expiration date, which is -1. Inactive. Right? That's a summary. Now, similar to this, we have a command called change. So this is login.devs. We have seen it. We have a change command as well, where same thing, we can give expiration date by hyphen capital E, inactive days, list the parameters, minimum days, maximum days, warning days, last day. When we set it to 0, that is whenever I will authenticate to the system, I will have to change my password immediately. So in Windows, we call it as change password upon first logon. So my password age is maximum password age is 90. I set my warning days to 7. So on 80th, after 83rd day, I will start to get the warnings.
If both the commands have the same functionality, then was the last one.
Okay. So when somebody has written a password, which was the initial command, he has not thought about this. Now a newer version is there to manage it and to get the summary as well. Similarly, an alternative to user add is the add user command. Same thing, right? You can have add user or you can have user add. Both the commands work. Okay. Simple. Then we have a pwquality.conf, which is amazing configuration file, very simple file. Something that you can relate to again a Windows environment. For example, you have minimum length. You have how many digits you want in a password, how many uppercase characters you want in a password, lowercase characters, other characters, which is the alphanumeric one. Then minimum class. Class is like digits is one class, alphabets are the another class, and alphanumeric is the another class. So how many classes you should have in a password? Should your password be all digits, or should your password be a digit plus a smaller character and an upper character? Or your password should be a smaller character and the alphanumeric character, which is the non-printable characters. So you can define those classes here. Maximum repeat. Max class repeat. Dictionary check and the user check. Parse username, parse password. Okay, so you can control these in the pwquality.conf.
Dictionary check, what exactly?
So every year we have on the internet, we get to see most vulnerable passwords, right? So I can download that list. I can create a dictionary using this and have a dict check enabled. So if any user is creating a password which is in that compromised list, it will be disallowed.
So you get it from process.
Yes.
And any of these criteria is not met while defining the password. Let's show what should be the length and.
Yes. Okay. Now there are two type of values that we can set, or three type rather. Negative value, 0, and a positive value. Negative means at minimum this should be the character should be there. For example, if I say min len is equals to -8, let's say, then my minimum length should be 8 characters. That's a minimum expectation. If I take it into a positive side, 8. Okay, I can have 8. So which in this case, it will work in a similar way. So minimum 8 characters, even in positive, minimum 8 characters. If I say D credit -2, I can have minimum of 2 digits. Credit means just a name. So minimum of 2 digits. And if I say D credit equals to 2, then that's like if somebody has given 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's satisfied. Okay. It is up to you what you want to design. Usually we design it in a negative or a less than 0. If it is 0, it is 0. So D credit is equal to 0 means no digits are required. Okay. But if I say, let's say -8 digits in the password, then I need to have those 8 digits in the password. Okay. So I define this in a pwquality.conf again by using a VI editor. So first one is also there, diff awk, which is number of characters in the new password that must not be present in the old password. A, B, C, D should not be there in the old password and was there in the old password. In the new password, I should not have A, B, C, and D. Similarly, minimum length, D credit, U credit, L credit, O credit, then min class, digits uppercase, lowercase, others, maximum repeat, max class repeat, and then dict path or a dict check. So if you just say dict check equals to yes, that will take care of your dictionary. So your dictionary should be created using that command. So whatever your file is, send it to the cracklib check. It'll check whether those passwords are there in the crack library or not. If not, create a cracklib dictionary with the dictionary file. So give that path of the file and that will create the cracklib. Okay. This is to check and this is to create. Simple.
So what if, I mean, let's say we have a dictionary file with a list of passwords and I'm creating a user and I give a password, which I'm not sure that it is.
If you are a root, you can bypass these controls. Now talk about you as a Shreyas. If you're changing your password and I have created a dictionary and you are setting up a password which is there in the dictionary, you will get an error, not password not allowed.
If all these parameters are patched, and then at the time of creation, it will check this dictionary check and then it throws up an error.
Yes.
So just after this, so you can tell us what is the do's and don'ts basically from the root account perspective, what we can do it or we're not supposed to do it from like a security and perspective, what we can check from a root account perspective.
Yeah. So we'll come to it as well. This is clear. Then managing group is like adding people to the group, giving the password of a group so that nobody else can join that group without the password and stuff like this. Now we'll come to the root. So common model is to put system admins in the sudoers file. Sudoers file is a file where you give delegations. Okay. We have etc sudoers file. We don't edit it with the VI. We edit the file with the VI sudo command. Single word VI sudo, and that will open up the sudoers file for the editing. The structure is very simple. You have the name, the user names. You can use commas, or you can create an alias of multiple users as well. So you have a name of a user. Then you have a control from where if a user one is logging from a particular IP, what that would have a delegation about, and if a user one is logging from another IP, what permissions the person would have. So you can control the user permissions based on the IP or the location from where they are logging in. Okay. So here it's a username logging in from any host. Okay. In my network environment, if I'm logging in from any host in my environment, then any command as any user and what command I can run. So this is like I am creating another root user. Everything is all. Okay. Now, if I want to give a permission, let's say first change the password of now if you see it says less than 1 digits. Why? Because of the pwquality.conf. Since I'm a root, the password is updated. Okay. Now, if I look at the history of or a summary of race 1, it is PS, password set, by the way of SHA-512 crypt. Earlier it was logged, LK. Now it is PS. Okay. Now what we were doing, sudoers. So if I do a vi sudo, I can create a user alias like other users. I have added user 1 and user 2 here. I can have race 1 and race 2 as well. I can create a command aliases as well, where I can group multiple commands and give a name to it. Okay. So rather than giving 10 different commands to a user, I will create or club those commands. I will give a name to those commands, like a power command or a group management commands, etc. So I can give those aliases and I can define those here. For example, if you see one of the aliases which is there is a networking. These are the set of commands which are required from a networking standpoint, like route, ifconfig, ping, DHCP client, net, IP table, etc. So these are all networking related commands available, which we can either allow or disallow a user group to have an access to. Now, what we are doing here is here, if you see what we are saying, other users, the alias that we have created. So other users can log in from anywhere, can become anything. So they can act as a system or as a root till the time they need that permission. Without the password, they can run restricted commands. And restricted command is another alias that we have created. Okay. The behavior of a sudo is the moment I say sudo and a command, it asks me for my password. Basically a re-authentication. If I give no password, that re-authentication is not needed. Okay. So that re-authentication would not be needed if I put a no password here. Otherwise, the moment I do sudo and then the command, it'll ask me for the password. Simple. You can become root with sudo -s, gives you a shell as a root, and you can work on the environment with the root, or sudo -i can also give you a root access, but in a complete transfer of the environment. So bash profile, bash_profile and bash rc, two files. If I do sudo -s, parses bash rc and bash profile would be in effect. Only my privileges will be root. If I do sudo -s. If I do sudo -i, the bash rc and bash profile of root user will also be executed, and then I will become a super user. Clear?
add sudo hyphen I, your aliases won't work.
Yes, root aliases will work. Yes.
You don't come to know what issues are used.
Correct. Okay. So the first file is this. Sudo hyphen L lists the permissions allowed on the host. Hyphen kill the timestamp of the sudo. Usually it is 5 minutes. So the moment I do sudo command, it asks me for the password. I enter the password. For next 5 minutes, it will not ask me again. But if I want every time I run a sudo command, a password should be asked, then sudo hyphen k can be put it as an alias for the sudo command. Clear? Then sudo hyphen b to run the program or the command in the background. And then sudo hyphen u is to become another user and not the root user. So sudo hyphen u raise 2, from a raise 1 user, I can become a raise 2 if I am allowed to in the sudo.
So basically, the sudo will be a privileged access for system admin. Not the other users will have.
No. Until unless they are added to the sudo, they will not be able to do any system admin activity.
And do system administrators have root access?
If permitted in the sudoers.
Will be root users.
It's a default system account, like administrator in Windows. Similarly, root user in Linux.
So with this sudo, more or less, they are becoming.
Yes.
So what is the purpose of using vi sudo instead of vi space sudo?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So why are we using vi sudo as a command instead of vi space et?
Can you type your question? I think we are breaking your voice. If you can type your question, please.
Sure.
Yes. Depending upon the sudo configuration, but they may have access. And even if they have access, they will, I mean, their deletion activity will also be recorded. Why vi sudo instead of why etc sudoers? Okay. See, Unix is a multi-user environment. If I do a vi /etc /sudoers file, it may not sync with any other change which is happening with the sudo file by another administrator. So to have it in a sync, vi sudo is a command which is used. If you do directly vi etc sudoers, it will not allow you to edit. So you have to edit it with the vi sudo command only. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Windows, they have an option to disable the administrator.
Yes.
So,
Yes. So rather than giving a shell to the root, give no login to the root.
So basically add a sudo list and rest of
That creates more conflict. For example, do some local control that is not available.
Yeah.
Usually, local administrator.
certain systems, they
So what's this? does the sudo?
So usually if you see today's installation, anytime that you add a user, they get some level of sudo access by default. I would say large access they get by default itself.
That is from the sudo list.
From a sudoers list. So usage of root should not be done because that's a highly privileged user. So to restrict, this sudoer is an alternative. I remember when I was in admin, sudoers was not so common. So we used to go and create multiple user with the user ID 0. Right? So that way we are admins. But then we forgot that we became a super admins. Right? And there was an instance where a breach happened and one of our user IDs got compromised and it was like all open. Right? So I think this sudoers adds a lot of layered abstraction where you have privileges, but everything is getting logged.
Sudo, you have a privilege of root as well, right?
Yes.
So once you disable the root, you get the privilege.
Yes. Yes.
Disable the root.
Yes.
So the sudo list basically replicates the sudo, and basically the root becomes redundant.
Yes.
Sudo.
So that is where when you audit review sudoers, how many all equal to all are there? If there are multiple all, basically you have redundant roots. These are some of the example rules which I don't think is visible even to me, but it basically says, sorry, Jack all, no password all, which means without password, Jack is a super user. Operator all has been power off, which means this person, operator, is only allowed to run the power off command.
All the hosts. Okay, you can access from.
Yes. Then some user, I don't able to read it. Password command A to
A to Z.
Up to Z.
That's
A to Z
A to Z star.
and not the password for root. So he can change it for any user, but not for the root. Similarly, these users can act as an operator by running these local OP commands. Okay, so different permutation and combinations. You were talking about cheat sheet, probably some of it. Right, so default timestamp for sudo is 5 minutes. Okay. And you will get this copy as well in the LMS, so you don't have to write it down. That's it. And now we are going to practice. Oh, we missed, I think, one slide, which is this one. So this is the file system. So what happens when we, again, that SDA stuff. So when we boot the system, we often see the mounted partitions are there, and if suddenly a power goes off and we start the system again, it starts the integrity check of the hard disk. Now, when this initialization is happening, the mounts are getting, or the slices are getting mounted. This fstab file, this fstab file is the one which mounts or creates the mapping during the boot time. So how do a system know that /dev/SDA1 is going to be mounted as a root?
Is this like a boot order?
Not the boot order, but a it is executed in the boot order to mount the file systems. Okay. Now, there are three key commands: fsck, mount, unmount, and fdisk. Mount is if I am mounting something manually. We are going to look at this command more deeper in the next session as well. But essentially, mount command allow us to mount a device file, which is /dev/sda1 or whatever the file, to a mount point. Mount point is nothing but a folder, empty directory. Okay, so I can mount my hard disk or a partition to a folder and then I can use it. I can do this with the mount command. -t tells the mount command whether it's a FAT or an NTFS or ext4, ext3, which is native to Unix. So what kind of file system is the mapping that I need to create? So the -t is there. Then I can have multiple options as well. For example, I don't want any executable on this mounted partition to be treated as an executable file. Even if it has X permission, I don't want to execute that file. So basically, I am mounting the partition in a safe environment or a safe mode. That is where I will have a no exec. So I will say -o, no exec, and then I will proceed. Similarly, I don't want any SUID or SGID, so I can say no SUID, no SGID. Similarly, asynchronous operation, I want to do it on the file system or a synchronous operation. If multiple users are accessing the file, I want asynchronous operations to happen. Right? So that's where I will use async option. So these are some of the options. Similarly, if I want to mount, let's say I have a image gallery for a website. I don't want the images to be changed. I want a website to use those partition or those images as a read-only. Even if my website gets breached, I don't want anybody to change those files. So I will mount the partition as a read-only partition. Irrespective of the permission that I have given, nobody will be able to do anything about it, not even root. Not even root. Because that's at a system level. Okay. So the way I will do it is mount -type NTFS -o no exec async no SUID no SGID read only. I can give it like this, or I can just say RO what to mount and where to mount. So what to mount is /dev/ the file name. Where to mount is an empty directory.
So if this is HD1, then have HD1 to home.
Yes.
And all these multiple options, like if there are more than two options,
Comma.
how do we just count?
Comma.
So, but once the privilege escalation happens, they can remount the same directory.
They can remount if there is a privilege escalation happen and they become a root. They can unmount and remount.
Okay.
Then fsck is a file system check and it's a straightforward command. So you simply say fsck first unmount the disk. So first unmount the disk by using the umount command. Umount and the directory where it is mounted. So that will unmount the partition. After that, use fsck and then the /dev/ whatever the partition name is. It will run the sanity check and correct the errors as well. Okay. The third one is a fdisk, where you get to see the partition tables. So if you do fdisk-L, you get to see what are the disks attached to your environment. And you can format, reformat, create partitions, all that stuff using fdisk. etc fs tab is where you have 6 different fields as a structure. Okay. Now, if you look at mount command, you have a type, you have options, you have what to mount, you have where to mount. These are the 4 fields which is used by fs tab. So the first field is a device name, what to mount. Second field is where to mount. Third field is the type of the file system. So ext4, xfs, etc., etc., etc. Fourth field is the mount options. Okay. Fifth and sixth field is if you have a fifth field and if there is an error, you want that during the boot time, if there is an error, you want that to be dumped or you don't want that to be dumped. Yes or no, 0 or 1. The sixth field is if during a boot time, there is a disk check that needs to be performed, you want that to be enabled or not, again 0 or 1. Okay, so these are the 6 fields in the fs tab entry. Now, if you look at the fs tab file, so you have this entry, which is UUID. So rather than giving the disk name, we are giving the unique ID of that disk. So UUID mounted to the root as an XFS file system, all the default options to be enabled, no dumping and no FSCK to be done. Then the second one is the boot, XFS defaults, no FSCK and no dumping to be done.
So FSCK is basically the scan.
File system check. Clear? सिंपल है जनार्दन कह रहा है सिंपल है right, and you will have one practical question from this. Okay, right, now we'll break for tea. And whatever area you want to practice, just let me know and we'll do that practice. Okay. All right. So we'll be back in 15 minutes then.
Having 3 stars.
Yeah. After having learned.
Once again, so that meeting. Play a game or some question.
You guys can say the terms that you.
Yes, man. RTCL3. No, it was
After that, so you finish both.
That's what I'm thinking. Which one will be first?
And these are the potential Okay, we are back. So you want to try Unix permissions, extended permissions, sudoers, passwords, or nothing? All the choices are there. Because you will have these files, so you can practice as well at your will. And if there is any doubt, we can any which ways connect on the weekend.
If I have created a user, which command will help me find the users list?
So cat space /etc/pass wd.
I carried forward this class.
Sir, is this pseudo same as role-based access control?
Not really. See, in role-based access control, you create more fine policies where you can define, let's say, the schedule or the time when a particular role can be activated. Similarly, you can define from where a person can manage or can log in, plus the permission. So this is only a permission part of it, out of that.
Are there any standard files for achieving such kind of role-based access controls in ETC or?
You can club, correct. So you can club multiple things together to give it a complete picture. You can have host.deny that will cover in the next session as well. How to limit the IPs from where the administrations can happen, for example. Then sudoers is another example. Then you can audit what they are doing. So if I am logging to a system, what all commands I have run, I can configure those as a log, and I can review those logs as well. So all that, if we can club together, then we can achieve that.
Okay, so there is nothing like separately any kind of commands for RBAC. It's only a combination of commands
No.
using which we'll achieve.
So what's the connection between this OS security level to the application security?
Means?
I mean, so we are discussing about this OS security.
Correct.
So how can we relate this to the application security, like web applications and so?
So think about a situation where you are running an application with a system user, right? If your application gets compromised, which means I, as an attacker or a hacker, would be acting as a system user or the user with which the Apache is running. Then if as an Apache user, I have access to root, if a Apache user is added to a sudoers file, think about the issue that it can create. Virtually the entire system is at my will then. But what if I control the user access of Apache to certain directories, to certain file, to certain processes, then it is more restricted environment that I will have. right? So that's the difference. Now, if I am looking at only application and ignoring the OS part, it's a half-baked security. If I'm looking at OS and not the application, it's the same story. So to be good at security, I need to have a balance between the OS and the application both. So this module will focus on the OS part. There would be a module in this course where you will focus on the application part as well. So if you both club together, then it gives you a better perspective about the wider security.
Once after that permission, there's a number one. What does it indicate?
Where?
Just after it,
1 GK and then stuff, right?
yeah.
That's the size of the file.
In fact, created one file and made some entry. See one, is it 1 KB or?
Bytes. So there are two things. One is a hard link. So think about a hard link as a copy of a file, a replica of a file. Like in a hard disk, you have sectors, right? So each sector is like 512 bytes. Similarly, in Unix or a Linux, there's a concept of inode, information nodes. Each inode would have information about, it's like a linked list. So each inode would have information about the file, time, date, owner, etc. Now, what happened when you create a copy or a hard link? So soft link is a shortcut. Hard link is where you have a file, you have created another replica of a file. This has 20 GB, 20 KB, and this also occupy 20 KB on the disk. So in total, if you lose this, you have a replica, creating a copy basically. Now, when you do LS, right, you get to see the, on the directory, you get to see number of links or hard links of that folder, and also the bytes that that particular file has. So for example, if you look in this particular example, you see total 0, right? And you get to see one GK, U grad, and then something, something, something. That one is a size in KB, and that zero is basically the number of directories that folder has under it.
In this system, if I do LSL, it shows total 0, but there are like 6 or 7 directories.
With hard links. Hard links is like a replica of.
Another question. If we type set FSCL help, we get to see the format. We do that to how to read that?
How to read the format? So the best part is to go to the man page. Okay, this is the format. Okay, now there are different options. PK, ND, RLP, VH, MX, ACL specifications, capital MX, ACL file, and then the file. If you press enter, it will go line by line. If you press space, it will go page by page. So for each of the switch that you see here, you will have a corresponding detail here. For example, -M is to modify, capital M is to modify file. If the ACL is stored in a file. Okay. Similarly, X is to remove and capital X is to remove the file. Similarly, these are the options. -B or remove all, either of it. Remove all extended ACL entries. -K, remove default. -N, no mask. Mask, default, restore the file. Test, recursively, logical walk, physical walk, version help, end. So these are the different options that you can use with the set FSCL command. So set FSCL, there would be an example at the end as well. For example, removing a name group entry from a file ACL. Set FSCL -X is to remove. G is the group, staff is the group name from the file. Similarly, -M is to modify the permission. So set FSCL modify, then this is the permission that we are giving to all the users.
So now M, that colon, that space, RX, and the file name will be a file name,
whatever is the file name that you're going to create. File is basically the file you already have. Correct. Similarly, user Lisa read on this file. User Lisa is the username. We are giving read access on this file to Lisa.
man page helps.
Yeah, man page helps.
So we can't hear anything. Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear.
Okay, I was saying that we are not speaking, we are just practicing what we have learned today in terms of the permissions or the users, the password configuration. So that's what we are practicing. So if you want to stay and practice now, you can do that. If you want to practice it out in the rest of the week, you can do that. So it's totally up to you what you want to prefer.
Okay. I mean, I was seeing some lip movement, so that's what I thought if any discussion was going.
Okay. No.
Sir, one question. As now we are discussing in the previous, I think, 30 minutes back, you have discussed about OSS and application security. So you said like application security, we have a different subject or a different class in the same subject.
So in MTech, you will have a different topic of application security, which will be covered.
Okay. Is it covered only for cyber security course or cloud security as well? So there are two different people in this class also.
It will be covered for cybersecurity.
Okay, not for the cloud.
Yeah.
Okay. But nevertheless, it is still relevant for cloud security, cloud architecture as well, right? So applications will be deployed on both.
Yeah, but see, from a cloud standpoint, the responsibility of the cloud management goes with the CSP only, right? So from our perspective, we cannot do an audit of a CSP, but
Okay.
whatever application that we have, either we host on a cloud or on the on-premise or on the co-location server, that responsibility is with us. So that will get covered in the cybersecurity.
Okay. So if we use the load balancer on-prem or in the cloud, then once the application is deployed, then it's a responsibility of a cybersecurity guy to ensure the security of the application or the server or the load balancer or whatever.
Yes.
Okay. We don't specifically run any specific dashboards in cloud to audit these security aspects in the cloud security.
We do have. So at a basic minimal checks, they do as so from an Azure standpoint, I can say that there is an advisor in Azure which tells you about the weaknesses or the vulnerabilities that it sees at a surface of your VM or the
Okay.
setup. So it tells you that your passwords are compromised, for example, or you have a port open which is vulnerable. You have a service which is exposed over to the internet. You don't have the RBAC controlled, enabled, and so on. So it tells you some different parameters from a security health standpoint. but from an audit standpoint, if you are having an IaaS as a service, then you are responsible for the security of it. If you have a PaaS, then cloud service provider, and the SaaS, then the cloud service provider as well.
Okay, sir.
All right, so we'll complete the session then. Yeah.
So what's the common check the list of members on the group?
The list of,
Members in the group.
so you have a ATC group as well. 5. Just see the members there. All right, guys. So we'll see you the next session then. We will have these slides posted on the LMS as well. So do take a time to go through these slides over the week and practice it out. If there is any query, drop it on the WhatsApp or just be ready for the next session. We will spare some time in the next session early morning to talk about those queries as well. Okay.
Post next session slides as well. Last time, you can take the printouts of them and come here and take the notes directly on those slides rather than separate.
Yeah, we can do that.
Because in the last class, there is one mistake and we keep on writing, then again.
Oh, is it? Sure.
Then we realized we should have brought the slides printout and the notes there
Yeah,
on the slide directly.
sure. All right, guys. Thank you so much. People on the teams, have a great day ahead and enjoy the rest of the weekend as well.
Thank you, sir.
What was he saying?